we're now selling into a recession, not selling into a boom. That doesn't mean that you can't make more money. Actually, my revenues have gone up, not down, since COVID.
In sales, we've all been taught that we need to be focused on benefits instead of attributes. But too often, we're focused on superficial benefits. Hi, I'm Joshua Carlson, co-founder of Propelo Media. Today, I get to sit down with Matthew Pollard, who is the founder of Rapid Growth Coach. Today, he's going to share a number of insights from how we need to be focused on pivoting in today's challenging markets to how we should develop better storytelling methods. And it starts first by digging deeper to not focus on the symptoms, but what are the actual root causes. And by doing that, what we can do is reveal opportunity and emotional costs attributed to a business situation. These are levers that we can use to develop a much more effective story. He's also going to tell his own personal journey, how he struggled as a shy introvert, but in a matter of a few months, he was able to become the #1 sales rep within his organization as a teenager by using systems. Now let's see what Matthew has to say. Matthew, thank you for coming on our Ask an Expert.
Mate, I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much for having me on.
Perfect. So lots going on right now. The past 3 months have been just a roller coaster. I'm curious from your perspective, what you're seeing businesses are doing well and what you're seeing businesses are struggling with right now.
I think there are two types of businesses. People that are just waiting for things to go back to normal, and they're the ones that are doing really poorly. And there are others that are understanding that there's a current epidemic that they have to deal with, and they're either pivoting or using this as an opportunity, or they're dealing with it in some way, shape, or form. I think, those are the people that are going to get through this. The ones that are acting like this isn't happening, and they're just going to keep businesses normal until it all goes back to normal. They're the ones that are, they're the people that are sending those hard pitch LinkedIn messages that we all can't stand. There isn't. But they have been smart. They've tacked on the front, I hope you're doing okay with the COVID situation, spam. So, it's a real pleasure to get those, right? But, a lot of businesses, I think, are really starting to understand that this is something that's not going to go away next week. Some of them have pivoted really well, and they've brought out, especially retail stores that have brought out new products, delivery methods. I think that's been terrific. And then there are others. It's funny. So I'm one of the top 50 speakers in the world, according to Top Sales World magazine. But I earn most of my income from not speaking. So, while I do well in the speaking world, I keep saying, if you have a speaking business and you don't have a business behind it, you don't have a business, you have a hobby. You get speaking deals when they come through and you make money from that. However, I have a consulting business, I have an online program, I have a whole bunch of books out there. And because of that, I have a diversified income stream that allows me to be safeguarded against situations like this. I think what's happened is that this current epidemic has shocked people to realize that if they only have revenue coming from one source, that isn't as safe as they thought it was. Mind you, if there's people that are employees that are listening to this show, that one source is also not as safe as you thought it was, right? So there is no security and safety in anything but diversified income streams. And sure, you can have a product that all of those income streams gets killed. However, it still allows you a better control. So I think there are a lot of people that have realized that they need diversified income streams. I think there is another group of people that have realized that the way they sell has to change, because we're now selling into a recession, not selling into a boom. That doesn't mean that you can't make more money. Actually, my revenues have gone up, not down, since COVID. Okay. However, you're selling to a different buyer. And what that type of buyer was, so many people listening are probably used to going to a customer and saying, so what are your needs right now? They don't know what their needs are. They're hiding under their desk going, when is this all going to end? Right. What they need now is thought leadership. What they need now is to be told, this is what you should do, not what is it that you want to do. And these days, the people that are bringing leadership back into the sales process, back into business acumen, people like you sharing these types of shows that provide great advice, that are helping people in these challenging times and actually changing their questions to talk about the challenging times, as opposed to using their standard flow diagram that they've had for the last 2 years. They're the ones that will build their brand, not tarnish their brand during this period.
So you mentioned a word pivot. That's kind of the buzzword of right now. One thing that I think is it's dangerous for companies is they pivot in the wrong direction because resources are tight and they're constrained right now. Do you have any recommendations for how do we see a direction and we think, hey, this is a good way to go, but how do we test it? How do we validate to ensure that, you know what,
moving in this direction, we've actually got traction available there?
Sure. So firstly, there are two types of pivots. The first one is what everyone's talking about right now, which is pivoting from one product to another or one service to another.
Right.
Now, that type of pivot, I tend to, firstly, that would be my second thing that I would look at.
Okay.
What I tend to look at as my first type of pivot is looking at my current business practices and saying, firstly, what are my costs that I currently have now? And most people have doubled down in sales and marketing activities that offer short-term transactional rewards. And sometimes what you have to do is pull back from those expenditures because you know that right now people's buying behavior has changed slightly. Now, as I said, my revenues have gone up. So people are still buying. However, they don't buy from hard sell, transactional kind of pitches. So if that's where you're spending money, that's got to shift. Now my speaking business, we've just decided that, yes, we're dealing with our current clients and we're doing a lot of virtual summits. We're getting, a lot of people reach out saying, can I help them virtually? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But there are other speakers that are offering to speak for free. They're, because they're just trying to stay relevant right now. They're not pivoting into other, ways of earning revenue. So one of the things that I would always suggest is for the people that are pivoting, the first question is there another delivery type of the services that I offer? Yeah. And because you've got these amazing people with amazing thought leadership IP, not just speakers, consultants, ghostwriters that, used to have people come to their shop or, different things like that. And they're not learning how to utilize the online world. So for me, pivoting can be pivoting where you spend your money. So we're spending a lot more money we've actually increased expenditures, not decreased them, but we decreased them in certain areas and then doubled down on the products and services that people will need when they come out of the COVID situation. We also have a different way of communicating that we doubled down on marketing right now to focus on the needs of the current populace right now. So there are ways of pivoting in your expenditures that you first need to look at. The second thing that you need to look at pivoting is the delivery method of your products and services. Just because, let's face it, online is terrible for a lot of people. I get it. I built 5 multi-million-dollar businesses from the ground up, but they're all bricks and mortar, telemarketing, direct sales. Yeah. I didn't even know how to change the word "that" to the word "they" on a website. Okay. However, when I moved to the US, I had to realize that if I ever wanted to go home to visit my family, I couldn't have 50 staff sitting here because, let's face it, you have to be around. If your parents get sick, you can't just leave for 6 months. Right. So I had to learn online. But what I realized is most people are terrible at networking. They'll go there and somebody has to politely listen to you for 2.5 minutes, which is why you feel like you're getting heard out. But it always is, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm an accountant. Oh, I've already got an accountant. Well, that's awkward. What do I do? Well, if you try and mimic that terrible behavior that does not work into the online forum where people don't give you 2.5 minutes, they give you less than a second before they click your tab closed, it's going to work even less. So one of the next things that I talk about when you're talking about pivoting is pivoting the styles of marketing. Because at the moment, when I moved from Australia to the US, I had to pivot to the online world. And what I realized is your messaging needs to be more concise. You need to understand the flow. You need to, one of the things that I'm really well known for is that I learned how to sell as an introvert. I had a reading speed of a 6th grader. I fell into a job in sales and I was able to learn selling as a system by watching YouTube videos. And, that's what my last book was about, which sold about 35,000 copies. When I moved to the online world, what I realized is that online sales is a system as well, except everybody has realized that people are scared of systems because that sounds like a lot of work. So they sell you shiny objects, right? Like, oh, pay for ads and put it to a funnel and everything will work. Or buy a webinar. Well, if your message stinks and you don't have great stories and your offering doesn't excite and inspire purchasing behavior, it doesn't matter whether you've got the person sitting in front of you when you couldn't sell before or online. Now, at least you're not feeling the rejection. You're just feeling the abundance of nothingness. So that's the way that I would look at pivoting first. Can I change the systems to attract clients? Can I change my product delivery methods? When you talk about moving into pivoting product lines, the first thing is people say, I need to pivot. I need an idea. That's an idea. Let's jump at that. That is the wrong way of doing things. I judged a bunch of Google startup weekends, a bunch of angel hacks. And the one thing that I said is I would not judge unless we agreed to make validation part of the criteria on which we judged. And one of the questions I would ask is, okay, did you go out and validate it with anybody? And they said, oh, we spoke to a couple of people in the groups here. I said, who here, did you go downstairs and speak to anyone in the real world? How many people, work in their garages to start an online business or start any type of business? They spend all of their life savings, their kids, college tuitions to build these businesses, and then they go, oh, it didn't work. But they never went out and spoke to anyone at the start to see if their ideal market consumer would actually buy the product.
Right.
They never actually even spoke to anyone 3 years later before they gave up to see whether or not there's one little element in their messaging that's wrong. Yeah. So what do, especially in this world where you can't actually walk downstairs and speak to anyone? Well, there are a couple of ways that you can validate. The first thing is there are lots of Facebook groups these days where you can go and offer advice and validate your ideas are actually helpful if you're offering a service. Sure. The other one is that there are so many virtual events right now. There are all these people that are offering virtual roulette kind of opportunities. Mm-hmm. There, BNI is a great one. BNI, while, whether or not some people want to show up at the BNI event every month for the rest of their lives, which is, not something that I would tend to do, though my mother literally paid my school fees by the clients she got from BNI. Okay. If you suck at networking, it's a great place to start. Right. But it gives you a one-off opportunity to do what's called a 60-second infomercial. So when you do that, if people actually lean forward and they're interested, well, that's a great start. Yeah. The thing that I would suggest is strategy before tactics, right? So one of the things that I would always recommend is before you start, say, validating your product and going, oh, I've got this idea, let me get into the jargon information, right? You're selling the features, not the benefits. Well, the truth is you've got to get your messaging right. You've got to get your stories right. You've got to start understanding. You don't go in and say, oh, I've needed to pivot really quickly because of COVID, and this is the new way you can give me money. Yeah. You've got to make sure your messaging is around, I've seen this need in the world. I'm passionate about this. I'm on a mission too. And therefore, we've created this product or service to help people in these times.
Okay, so fantastic. And I think a lot of people lose sight of this, especially existing business owners, right? So they may have started there, but they've been in the business for years and they've stopped really checking the pulse of consumers. And certainly in the past 3 months, things have changed dramatically. So it's great to hear not only that you need to go back, but the good ideas that you shared. You mentioned marketing, and one of the things that's interesting, as an agency here, we're always looking and saying, hey, what's new, what's emerging? And video is this space that is just, it's blown up in the past 3 months, right? Because I can't be next to the coworker or the colleague I was, but so much of it has been internally focused. I'm curious what you're seeing and or what you think we should be seeing as it pertains to video to reach out to actual consumers instead of doing, mass commercials, right? Where it's all about me. Video, as the way we've been using this past 3 months, it's been about dialogue. It's been about engagement, which to me is incredibly exciting.
Yeah, it's been interesting because I think what you found is in the offline world, you had a lot of, transactional people. So, in my next book, I talk about that there are really two types of networkers. Okay. You've got the transactional people. Do you want to buy from me? No? Okay, what about you? Do you want insurance? Do you want insurance? Yeah. And that's the people that, most people can't stand in networking, but more often than not, they're the ones that make money because at least they're doing something, sure. Right? Then you've got those aimless networkers that find that behavior disgusting, but because of that, they just hang out at networking events with a couple of people that they know, or they find somebody that they want to have a dialogue with and they talk to them, and they have no real conversation of substance. And then they get to the end of that conversation, they swap cards and they never call each other because they don't even have enough time to hang out with the friends they've got. So what was the point of that one, right? Yeah. There was no business done. So neither option really worked. And I introduced strategic networking. The problem is that I'm finding what happens is people are moving into video with the same kind of mindset. They're going in to do videos where it's, hey, buy from me, I offer this, you need what I do, which is hideous on social media. And if you get someone doing that, feel free to unconnect. Don't feel like you need to stay friends with that person. Yeah. Because, I think Adam Grant wrote a great book, and he talks about, givers and takers and balance sheet makers. And those people, they just want to take. Like, can you give me money? Give me money. Give me money. I need money. I've been told that if I go on this social profile, you'll give me money. So here we go. Give me money. Horrible. Yeah. But then you've got those aimless people that just get on a video and they think the goal is to just share what they know. Well, we've all been to networking events where somebody opens up the fire hose of information, and all of a sudden you're like, I just need to get away from this person, right? You're overwhelmed. So the goal of going into video is, again, all about being strategic. So the first thing you have to realize is that speaking to everyone is speaking to no one. So you can't go into social media. I mean, I hate people that do this in networking, that they go up to someone and they say, oh, I'm in insurance. Oh, yeah, I specialize in insurance. Oh, I sell, I'm a business coach. Oh, I work exclusively with business coaches, right? They try and mold themselves to every single person, or they just say, I sell a general service. Can you buy it from me? The truth is, online, it's the absolute opportunity that you can use technology, psychology, and strategy to get your ideal clients to really chase you. The problem is most people have no idea who their ideal client is. So the problem with most people going down that path is most people, especially during COVID, any client's a client, right? We need to get money in the door.
Yeah.
But the problem is, unless you exclude certain people, you can't include the people you truly want. And in today's globally connected society, you really can get thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to chase you, even if you pick one little slither to own. The problem is, if you don't pick that slither, everyone else will have the same bland message as you. Right. So, it's funny when, I started an educational company in Australia, and we, originally we were looking at different sectors. And when I started this, it's the American equivalent of a college. Okay. And when we got through the process, we were sort of looking at it and we're like, well, there's really two types of customer bases. People that have already got a degree and they want further education. These people want MBAs and colleges that they can show their employer that are impressive, not this brand new school that no one knows the name of, that they, they probably believe that you printed it on a printer last night. So, that would have been a hard business to get into. So what was the other option? School kids leaving high school, didn't get the grades, study with us, get the grades, and then go into your college of your choice. Well, again, those people would have left the first chance they had, which would have left us in this hustle. But then what we realized is there was this marketplace of tradespeople. Plumbers, electricians, tilers, these people have done long apprenticeships, and then they usually have learned through sarcasm and aggression, right? They do something wrong, they get picked on until they get it right. Yeah. Eventually they succeed, but then they look around, they're like, well, everyone's getting paid exactly the same as what I'm getting paid. Forget this, I'm going to go and start my own business. So they do, and they get their first clients, and they're doing well. So they start to hire some people, and now, there's wastage and they don't know how to manage their staff. Oh, wait, they do. Sarcasm and aggression. That's how they learn. So they'll do the same thing. They don't have any systems or processes, and now they've got to sell and market, and their business isn't working. Like, they're making less money than they used to make, and less money than a lot of their staff, which really feeds that sarcasm and aggression, right? Like a bunch of people I know have got, that I first meet a lot of the times have got $1 million revenue businesses, and they think that's great. And then I ask them what their actual profit is, and they're making less money than their executive assistant, right? So it's so important that you have a profitable business, and they didn't have the systems, but they couldn't afford business coaching because they weren't making any money, but they didn't trust school because school had let them down. They had that view, if you can't do, you teach. We've all heard that saying, right? Yeah. So they told themselves that. It made them feel better. So what we did is we launched with business coaching at a price you could afford. We opened it up to 20 tradespeople that worked on a trade site, and each one was run like a mastermind, like a business coaching session. Okay. Now, we only started with just tradespeople, just electricians on a trade site. Then we opened it up to all people on a trade site. And then we went, well, florists and hairdressers, they're kind of tradespeople too, right? Yeah. And then we went, well, doctors and lawyers, aren't they tradespeople? I mean, they've done a 7-year degree, but no one taught them how to run a business. Yep. So we started, actually we got reached out to by the Australian College of Anaesthetists and the Law Institute of Victoria. Now we've got 3,500 students, all because we made the decision to only speak to electricians at the start. Right. Now, if you're looking, I don't care if you've got 50 years worth of experience, but never really marketed online, brand new territory for you, right? So even if we've been selling to all these groups, pick one to get your message out. So when you do your videos, it's who is it to? It's to the electrician that needs to learn how to run their business. So all of your videos need to speak to them. So when you do that, what you want to do is before you get into every video, you need to think, what do I want to tell them? Why is it relevant to them? How am I going to explain it in less than 60 seconds? Because when you get on camera, it'll take 2 to 3 minutes. Trust me, the first few times. So focus on giving it to them in 45 to 60 seconds. So it only takes 2 to 3 minutes to explain it to them. And by the way, that'll feel like about 10 seconds for you. And then what do I want them to do at the end? Now, most people will think that what you want them to do at the end is what? Go to your contact us page and buy your stuff, right? Pick up the phone and call us. Absolutely not. What you want them to do is go to another piece of your content,
Yeah.
right? You want them, but you want them to jump from the social media platform to your website. Now, if your website looks like a shopping cart, then they will bounce straight back to social. And then you're going to reach out to me and say, Matt, I tried that, video thing the way you suggested, and it didn't work. Because your website shouldn't look like going down the aisle at Walmart.
Right.
It should offer them value and content. The goal of a website is only to do one thing: get their email address. Then you give them more value by promoting them the opportunity to want to book a call. Now that is leverageable. It qualifies everybody. And it gets them to then, when they book a call, they're ready to buy. Now, of course, if they're ready to buy and you still don't have a sales system, then they're still not going to buy. And then you're going to come back to me and go, Matt, I tried it and I got on all these phone calls and nobody bought anything. Well, the reason why they didn't buy anything is because you didn't have a sales system. And to be honest, it blows me away how many people just say whatever comes out of their mouth when it comes to a sale, especially those extroverts, right? Because they love winging it. But introverts, especially because they hate selling, they tend to avoid thinking about it. And then they get on the phone and then they get to that awkward, so do you want to work together? Which you should never say, by the way. The problem is you get to the end and you're hoping that the customer says, yes, we should absolutely work together,
right,
which never happens. So you're then forced to ask that awkward question. My suggestion to you is to really take a step back and think about the sales process. Now, my first book was The Introvert's Edge, How the Quiet and Shy Can Outsell Anyone. And it outlines in the first chapter the 7-step process to actually make a sale. Now, the reason why I do that is I'm motivated to really help introverts realize that they can sell. And you can get the first chapter for free at theintrovertsedge.com. But what I would suggest is all the best digital marketing in the world can only get people on the phone to you. Once they're on the phone, you have to turn them into a customer. So what I would suggest is grab those 7 steps that I outline, look at what you currently say to a customer, put what you say under those 7 steps. And the first thing you'll realize is there's a bunch of things you say you should not be saying. Don't figure out how to fit it in, throw that stuff out. Then you'll realize that a bunch of stuff that you say is out of order. So you'll be able to fix that order. And then you'll realize there are some gaping holes, generally around the process of telling great stories and asking great questions. If you do nothing more than set up that structure and fill in the gaps, you'll double your sales in the next 60 days.
Okay, so you said storytelling. I'm curious from your standpoint, how do you craft a good story? What is the process to come up with that?
It's funny. I speak all over the world on storytelling. Well, actually now I speak nowhere in the world because I speak right here across the world. But when I do talk about storytelling, the thing is, and it's funny, I go through and I do this presentation where I explain to people that most people, when they tell stories, it's so matter of fact. We work with the customer, they wanted this, we gave it to them, happy ending. Right. So I then explain to them that stories should be more like the story of how you met your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend. Right. And you'll remember the first time you told that, it was probably a little bit clunky. You kind of explained it and you were like, oh, he didn't really enjoy that part. Maybe I won't tell that part next time. Right. And, oh, he really enjoyed that. Maybe I'll embellish a little bit on that next time. And soon it becomes a little bit of a theatrical masterpiece, right? I say this, my wife says that, we say this together, we hold hands, we look at each other, like, so that's how we met. The problem is that kind of storytelling doesn't exist in the business format. And I have no understanding for why, but we think that when we tell stories in business, it needs to be more like a CNN eyewitness account. I don't understand why this is the case, but it tends to be the case. I worked with $1 billion tech company, a couple of years ago. And so one of the things that I do for big corporates is I'll deliver a presentation. I'll say, so what does a great story look like? And then I'll tell a story like I work for their organization. And I'll tell this 3 to 5 minute story with industry acronyms if I can't avoid it. And I'll go right through this. And I'll then say at the end, who here thinks I work for X company? And, 90% of the room, for me to tell a story in that much detail, everybody puts their hand up almost. And then I explained that I interviewed for this story a couple of weeks ago. I wrote the story the other day. I learned it over the last couple of hours, and now I'm delivering it today. If I can do this, what's your excuse, right?
Yeah, right.
So, and truthfully, most big corporations, most small businesses, they only need 3 stories. But what I suggest is that they need to realize that the best stories have huge amounts of emotional content. And so when I was interviewing for this story, there were 7 people that I literally, if I could have had a big shining light over them, like a full on, investigative, interview, I would have. But for 45 minutes, I interviewed them to get this information from the story. I then retold it back to them in about 45 seconds. They're like, oh my gosh, how did you do that? And the answer is, stories actually have 4 segments, not customer wanted this, we gave it to them. However, the problem is that most people don't focus on the right detail. So for instance, I asked them at the end, I said, I'm glad you enjoyed that story, but the thing that I will tell you is that there are a few things missing still. Firstly, what was the customer's name? Because they keep saying the CTO of X company. How do you feel the feelings of the CTO of X company? You just can't do that. So the person's name was David. When it comes to David, I can feel everything. But secondly, you talked about the fact that they wanted to move their technology to the cloud. And you keep talking about, the fact that you were chasing them for years. So why all of a sudden did they change their mind? They didn't know. They had to go out and find out. Well, it turns out this was a government organization and the server had crashed just before Christmas. They couldn't run payroll. Now imagine being the CTO of a company where there are thousands, a government organization where there are thousands of staff and no one's getting paid and it's your fault. Secondly, there are all these people that can't afford to buy presents. They can't afford to buy Christmas turkeys. Now, sure, a lot of them could put it on credit card, but some people live hand to mouth, right? So all of a sudden you've got people stressed about their rent and explaining to their landlords that they weren't paid, so they'll get that money to them shortly at Christmas time. And also he was the guy responsible for his entire department having to work through Christmas and not seeing their family to fix the problem to get pay done before New Year's Eve. That part was missing from the story. I worked with a gym franchise and one person got up and told me this amazing story about, this person that struggled to, and this was after I gave them a bunch of examples, because it's just not part of what our normal framing, our brain thinks about when it comes to business stories. But she was like, I'm really excited about this story. This person was going to cancel the gym membership. And then what I realized is they just needed a health plan. We gave them the health plan and then they stayed and they were really happy that they stayed. Okay, why did they want to lose weight? Turns out it was a lady that couldn't get pregnant because she was overweight. Did she get pregnant afterwards? Yes, she did. How are her parents about that? Are they happy?
Right.
How does this stuff not become part of the story? So a story really has 4 quadrants. The first part of the story is the pre-existing problem, right? What was the problem? But problems, the way most people think about them, most problems, they're like, oh, the customer, needed this or they had this issue, but they don't talk about the overarching, structure of the problem.
Right.
For instance, when I was selling to an electrician in Lilydale business education, I said, what problems do you have in your business? He said, none really. And I'm like, geez, I just came out 45 minutes to speak to this guy. If he has no problem. So I literally responded with, well, most businesses have these 3 problems, especially electricians. I mean, all I did was sell to electricians, right? So I knew them better than they knew themselves. He's like, no, don't really have any of those. Like, okay. Do you have any problems at all? And he's like, well, if I really had to think of something, maybe it's that my staff don't clean up after themselves. And I'm like, okay, well, how much is that costing? Well, not much. Occasionally I've got to send them back. So, maybe an hour here and there. Not really an expensive problem, right?
Right.
So then I say, okay, so I need to think, by the way, this is the real cost where most people spend their time. Now we're going to move into this thing that nobody talks about, this miraculous world of opportunity cost. Yeah. I said, let me ask you a question. Do you ever go out and see clients yourself? He said, yeah, I go out and see clients from time to time, not as often as my staff, maybe, they'd go and see 40 people a month. I maybe go and see 10. I said, okay, so for the 10 you go to, how many of those do you get referrals from? Oh, he goes, at least 3. I said, okay. Now, how much did you really make out of those referrals? He goes, anywhere, upwards of $1,000. I said, okay, are they kind of your bigger things like some of the, yeah, we get a couple of $100 off the, the call-ins we've never spoken to. The referrals is always where the money is. I said, okay. I said, so how many referrals are your staff getting? Oh, no, not as many as me. They'd be lucky to get, maybe 1 or 2 a month. So hang on a second. They see 4 times as many people as you, but only get to see 1 or 2. I said, you would be getting closer to 12 referrals. They'd be lucky to get 2. That's 10 referrals they're missing out on. And you said it was about $1,000, right? So it's about 10 grand an employee. How many staff do you have? He said, I got 5. Now he's starting to look really puzzled. I said, so would it be fair to assume that maybe your staff not cleaning up after themselves because they don't understand customer service perhaps the way they should be might be costing you $50,000 a month? Said, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of that. This is opportunity cost.
Yeah.
But that's not the most powerful. That'll get people to make a decision with you eventually. But then I moved on to the real kicker, which is the emotional cost, right? I said, does it stress you out to know that your staff, because they're not cleaning up after themselves, might be costing you $50,000 a month? He goes, does now? So then I asked the next question. You ever got to a Friday night and you're in that situation where you're about to head home, you get a phone call from an irate customer because your staff haven't cleaned up after themselves. You can't get them on the phone because they're at the pub. It's Australia, right? Every trader's at the pub on a Friday night. So everyone's at the pub and you can't get them on the phone and you've got to go clean up after yourself. It's like, my wife and my daughter actually are talking to me at the moment because I just missed a dance recital that I promised that I would be there. But one bad review, I mean, that's my whole business dead.
Right.
So how soon do you want to fix this problem, right? Straight away. So that is the problem. You see how much more robust that is?
Sure.
Now, when I get into the analysis and the implementation, it's a super easy way of explaining. Sometimes it's the problems that we're not seeing that are sometimes the most expensive problems that we have in our business. Then you move into the, what was the conclusion? What was the outcome? And the outcome was the real cost, saved or made? Was the opportunity cost realized? Was the emotion? Does he get to see his kids' football games and the dance recitals now? Is he happier, right? You joke about the fact that his kids are talking to him again, which is nice. So what's the moral of the story, right? And then you hammer home the moral. So the goal is that the problem, part 1, and the outcome, part 3, need to focus on real opportunity and emotional costs.
Okay.
Part 2 is the analysis and the implementation. That's where everybody wants to talk and over-inform. All of us data-centric nerds or introverts or people that just have 30 years of experience, they can't help themselves. That's where they spend 80% of their story. And it's really where you should spend like 20%, right? The real focus for you is spending 30% on the start, 30% on the outcome, and then 10% on the moral. And really, I mean, how much did I actually talk about customer service training? Not really at all. It's only that was the analysis that we realized, right? That is the way you're supposed to tell a story. It should be an emotional roller coaster that is designed to educate and inspire, but not overwhelm them with data and jargon that's just going to overwhelm them. If you confuse the customer, you lose the sale, right? So you don't overwhelm them with that. And that's what's going to embed you as the only logical choice. And what's interesting is what people don't understand about stories is, firstly, it's been scientifically proven. It was a Stanford study. People remember up to 22 times more information when embedded into a story. The second thing is it activates the reticular activating system of our brain. There's some really cool studies out of Princeton that when you tell a story, what actually happens is our brains synchronize, which for the introverts out there, it creates artificial rapport, which allows us to then foster that into real rapport. But it makes us feel at ease. It's why when I get on stage, the first thing I tell is a story. I feel everybody become more comfortable. I get more comfortable, and then I'll continue on. And the third, and this is the most powerful, when you tell a story, it short circuits the logical brain. It has no idea how to interpret a story, and you speak to the emotional part of your brain. If you want to understand the difference, the logical part of the brain is going, that won't work for me. I'm not sure. My situation's different. I don't have time for this. Hang up. The emotional part of the brain is the part of the brain that listens to all of it, takes all of the details and assumes them as fact because they don't know how to interpret it any other way, and listens for the moral. So if the moral of the story is, I worked with someone just like you, we had an amazing outcome, I understood them better than perhaps you understand yourself, and here is the moral of the story, that our product or service works for you, they're going to want to work with you. And the great thing is, as soon as you tell the story, the logical brain short circuits, the emotional brain goes, story time, and it just listens.
Right.
And that is the real power of telling a great story. However, in truth, unless you have a message that resonates and excites and inspires, as a lead-in, you're never going to get the opportunity to tell your stories. And online, that is even more the case.
Yeah. So the big takeaway that I'm hearing here is that whether you're talking to a customer or you're looking at your own organization, too many times we as individuals look at the symptoms, not the root cause of something. And so when we focus on that, we lose all of the richness that is really the issue. And so it's asking why. It's digging deeper, and that's what's going to reveal all of these rich, emotional connections that you can then weave together to make a much better story.
Absolutely. And it's funny. So I've got so many people that I know that are so proud of their relationships with their clients, yet they don't know that the kid was missing that he was missing his kids' football games, or that, he was worried about losing his job because the server crashed before Christmas, right? Or that he missed, he wasn't even there to carve up the turkey. Those are the elements that get people to drive and move forward. So absolutely, it is asking the deeper questions. but it's also using a three-dimensional set of glasses. I mean, a lot of people listening today are probably, worried about the COVID situation. And the COVID situation, if I look at it just from a problem perspective, right? The fact is most people don't know how to market in the online world, right? And that is a problem that, shows like yourself are helping people kind of get past. But the opportunity cost there is huge. And the emotional cost is really the biggest driver. I mean, they're not sure how they're going to pay their kids' school fees. They've got their kids sitting at home right now and they're watching daddy or mummy be really stressed, and that's uncomfortable. And, there's a lot of emotional elements that are going on that most people just are not aware of, and they're scared to talk about. Now, it is scary to talk about it. But if you talk about it with a customer directly, are you finding this? It's like, let me get my salt. Where was that wound? Let me just see if I can put enough salt on that wound for you. But if you talk about someone just like them that had these stress, it's external, but they'll experience the moral and they'll see the value in moving forward.
Yeah, that's fantastic insight. I've got several questions, but we got time for about one more. So what I'd like to do, I'm just big on your passion. So you do a lot. So you've consultancy, you're an author, you're host of a vodcast similar to this. Where did this originate in you? I mean, what was the catalyst of the young version of you that just had this fire?
So, I mean, my story is really interesting. So, and I shouldn't be where I am today, and I definitely shouldn't be advising anyone that's listening. But what I will tell you is, I had a reading speed of a sixth grader in late high school. I had horrible acne. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And luckily enough, I got diagnosed with this thing called Irlen syndrome, which means I put on this pair of magical colored lenses and I can learn to read. Now, I can't be a reader like everyone else. I've got to learn, start the process of learning. Yeah. But for 2 years, I hustled to succeed. And, I got to the end. I mean, I was exhausted, but I got in the top 20% of my state. But I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And being the learning disabled kid with the funny glasses and the bad acne didn't really, work with my confidence really well.
Yeah, right.
So because of that, my family all agreed that I'd take a year to find myself. And literally what happened is I took a job at a real estate agency. And no, I wasn't the guy out there selling. I was the guy in the back office doing data entry with a look on my face saying, don't speak to me, I'm here to find myself. But 3 weeks into my job, my boss said, I'm sorry, we're going to have to let you go. We've just decided to close down this office. And it's Australia at Christmas time. You can't get a job. I mean, it's summer at the same time. So everyone goes off on the 20th of December and they're off with their families until the 15th to 20th of January. The only jobs I could find were these things called commission-only sales roles, which I can tell you, I mean, is terrifying for an introvert.
Sure.
But the only thing more terrifying was telling my father, who broke his back 80 hours a week, that I wasn't going to work for the summer. So I decided that I would apply for all 3 jobs that I found, and I got all 3. Turns out they hire everybody. They have this saying, we throw mud up against the wall and we see what sticks.
Yeah.
Sounds fun until you're the mud, right? So for me, I took the job that offered me a B2B role because apparently I had potential because I was the only one that showed up for an interview wearing a suit. It wasn't the best suit. It was a black, it shined in the sun. I mean, it was 100 degrees out in the shade in Melbourne. And I was the guy that was supposed to walk out on the street. The suit didn't breathe. It was a lime green shirt and a post office red tie. It was all I had. But I had potential because I wore a suit. So they gave me 5 days of product training and they threw me on this road in Melbourne, Australia called Sydney Road. And I mean, this is over 1,000 retail stores on each side. Google it. It's terrifying. I remember getting out there and going, okay, I've got to walk into the first door. Oh God, I have no idea what to say. No one taught me that bit.
Yeah.
So I took a deep breath and I decided to walk in anyway. And I was politely told to leave. Shortly after that, I was less politely told to leave. Then I was, sworn at. My personal favorite was always go get a real job. And so, I mean, it's the only job I could get. But door after door, this happened until my 93rd door where I made my first sale. I made about $70. And I remember I was ecstatic for, probably about 45 seconds. And then I had my second realization for the day. I've got to do this again tomorrow and the next and the next. Now, I think a lot of people kind of, especially with, with what's happening right now, the same thing's happening. We go into this fight or flight mechanism, right? So we either hustle through it, which is the big entrepreneurial thing, right? We just hustle through it or we run away. For me, I was not willing to hustle through, but I also couldn't quit. So I decided that I had to believe that sales was a system, because if it wasn't a system, my year was going to suck. Yeah. So I decided to go looking for that system. But remember, I had a reading speed of a sixth grader, so I couldn't exactly pick up a Brian Tracy or a Zig Ziglar book. It would have taken me a year to read it, let alone apply it. And these sorts of shows and things like this didn't exist back then. But I did discover this cool tool called YouTube. And by the way, there's a lot more on there than just cat videos. I put a ton of content out there to help people now because it helped me so much. But I taught me how to set myself the sales system by watching YouTube videos. And every day I'd go out and I'd get better. Soon it was 73 doors, then it was 45 doors, then it was 38, then it was 16, then it was 9, then it was 3. I got it down to 1 in every 3 doors I'd make a sale. About 6 weeks in, my manager pulls me aside. He's like, Matt, we're kind of blown away by this, because I was the quiet guy that handed my paperwork in downstairs, and then listened to all the boisterous salespeople talk about how hard the world of sales had become. And, but he told me I was actually the number 1 salesperson in the company, which just so happened to be the largest sales and marketing company in the Southern Hemisphere. It took 6 weeks. By the way, all these people watching, a lot of people used to go, yeah, but Matt, I don't really have 6 weeks where I could really just sit down and focus on this. Well, COVID has given you that time, by the way. Yeah. So utilize that time to learn a sales system, to learn the power of online. There's a ton of free videos. Type in my name with the word unified message. That is absolutely the first place that I would start, because if you don't have a message like that excites, inspires people to want to know more about you, then you're really going to have trouble getting people to speak to online. And I wish we had more time to talk about this. Maybe we can do it in a follow-up segment.
Yeah,
but what I actually did was I learned that sales could be a system. And because of that, I became the number 1 salesperson in the company. So of course they promoted me, which no one, just because you can sell doesn't mean you can manage. They give me a team of my own mud to throw against the wall. All 20 people quit within the space of like 3 days. So, but then they gave me another team, but by then I YouTubed how to manage, and I started to get a handle of it. And by the end of that year, I got the nickname the young Anthony Robbins, because I was so good at teaching people sales systemization, introverted or extroverted alike. But, fast forward just under a decade, I've been responsible for 5 multi-million-dollar success stories. However, some of those businesses I loved, and some of them I absolutely couldn't stand. And, one thing I learned is I can create rapid growth out of anything. But there's nothing worse than a rapid growth business with customers you can't stand and a business you don't like.
Right.
So in 2013, I took the year off. I traveled the world for a year, and I decided that what I was going to do is create my passion business. And I had to really look at what it is that I loved. And the truth is that I love supporting the underdog small business owner. That is my true passion. I grew up watching, across the road, we had a family, and they were so in love, and their son was a friend of mine. And I remember they were really happy. They were excited about starting their own business, and then they really weren't happy. And then they were divorced, and I got to see my friend half as often, right? Because they separated. And I have the skill sets to help people understand the things outside the scope of their functional skill that'll allow them to truly obtain rapid growth in their business. And while it's just as relevant in corporate, and it's funny, I speak to a lot of billion-dollar tech companies, and I'll from stage say how much I don't enjoy it and how my preference is to work with small business, but I love the money that they pay me, and I use that to support the small business economy. Right. Everybody laughs, but I'm not joking. Right. And so, but I'm just open about what my niche is. And then I realized the group that needs the most help was the introverted group. When I started speaking about rapid growth the lazy way, I talked about how to differentiate, how to niche, and how to create a sales system. And before I introduced sales, I talk about my unique journey. And so many introverts would come up afterwards and say, Matt, I just didn't know that sales could be a system. I thought because I didn't have this gift of gab, right. Sales was an extrovert arena I would just have to cope in or become more extroverted, which feels so inauthentic and so incongruent for the average introvert. Our path to success is just different. And in truth, introverts beat extroverts hands down as salespeople if they learn a system. But without it, we kind of stink. So the goal is, to learn that system. So I decided that I was going to focus on helping introverted service providers primarily obtain rapid growth in their business by understanding the 3 major principles that were going to allow them to create rapid growth businesses doing what they love. And, it's funny, I earn great money. And I'm, of course, the reason why I get to speak to a lot of EO groups and, major corporations is because of my successful past and because I'm now doing a whole bunch of things that are all really succeeding. Sure. But the truth of the matter is, if you can have a passion for doing something you love, you tap into this unparalleled energy, and, no one can really compete with you when you would do what you do for free. It's just nice that you get paid. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, COVID or the 2008 crash, where I made more money than I did, like COVID, I make great money during these recessions because most people are in, spasm mode, and I'm in, okay, here we go. It's crunch time. But the thing is that what I will tell people is that you really can create a great business doing what you love. And if you keep trading in your passions for the practical, you'll find, I mean, Jim Carrey probably says it best than me. I mean, he did a university address where, he said, my father was a funny man. Just Jim Carrey's a comedian for anyone that doesn't know. He said, my father, he was a really funny man too, and he could have been an amazing comedian. But he made the decision to make the practical choice and become an accountant instead. Many years later, his father was laid off and they had to do what they could to survive. I mean, Jim Carrey was a janitor at his own high school, if you can imagine how terrible that would be, just to support the family. He said, the thing that I learned is you can fail at what you don't want. So why not take a chance at what you love? And the truth is that if you're in the world of sales and marketing, there is no way you can compete with me because I have this huge adrenaline and energy for helping introverted service providers. The only way you could possibly compete is if you shared that motivation.
Right.
And because of that, I would suggest, I've worked with people in insurance that seem like they have no passion. And then all of a sudden we found an uncle that had to sell his farm because, he didn't have the right insurance policies and things like that. And he wants to make sure no other business owner ends up in that situation. We tapped into that passion. All of a sudden, bang, there's a way of making money. And all of a sudden their sales triple. And sure, yes, you need messaging. You need to have a message that excites and inspires. You need to know your niche. You need to have packaging and pricing that stimulate purchasing behavior. You have to have your 3 core stories. You need to know how to embed it in networking and sales and in all your online artifacts. If you don't care enough, remember you could do anything. You chose this. So there has to be an underlying passion there. We need to tap back into that, even if there's so much dust on it that you're going to give yourself, a sneezing fit just to get it uncovered. Do the work and create a business around doing what you love. Because in today's globally connected world, even if there's only one potential client in your current city, in a global community, there is enough to pay you endless amounts of money for the rest of your life. So take a chance on doing what you love.
Well, very inspiring. And I want to take you up on your offer. I'd love to have you back for a second part because I want to continue this conversation. So Matthew, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate the insights you shared today.
It was a pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. I'm sincere. I would love to have you back on because we got through half of them, but this is really good. It's inspiring. Talked to a lot of speakers, but this is certainly one that is combination of tactical and inspirational, which I think is a awesome combination. So thank you so much. I'll reach out to you and love to just get you back on the calendar here in the next month or two.
Yeah, perfect. Well, send me the calendar link, and what I'll do is we're in July. Let's plan for doing something in September time.
That's perfect. Perfect. Okay.
Terrific.
Thank you very much.
Well, mate, it was a pleasure. I have to jump off. I ran over. It wasn't your fault, but I do have to jump off.
Totally understandable. Have a good one.
Thank you, mate. Cheers.